Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Justle podcast. I'm here with Ted Tuerk, founder of Vojo Ventures and the creator of the Inflection Point coaching methodology. Ted is a business strategist and coach and has his own practice. Ted, thanks for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Woo. Hey, Ernie, it's great to see you, and thank you very much.
As you know, this podcast is to help people who are looking for work or thinking about their next step along the journey. And you've been out there coaching folks, building your practice. I thought you would be a great person to come and talk to us and share what you're doing out there. So I think folks would really benefit from hearing your story and what you're up to. So why don't I hand the mic over to you, and you can tell us a little bit about your practice and what you're doing out there.
All right, great. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and get a chance to talk to you more. You know, we know each other a little bit, so this is great. So I'm really doing two things right now. I do business coaching where I can help any small business find hidden revenue without spending additional money on marketing or advertising. That's kind of my thing. And always, in the way it leaps over, my other part of my business is I do leadership coaching for individuals. And those two things are very different in some ways, but they're also very much the same, because when you're working with a business owner, you are working with them as a person, and it's about helping them get out of their own way. It's in the individual, and the leadership coaching is about helping the individual get out of their own way, get happier, get more satisfaction no matter what they're doing. And that's really what excites me, is I like working with people and seeing them bring change into their lives. And so the word change is really where I came up with this inflection point coaching methodology idea, that we're facing change all the time, every day. It could be from a hairstyle. It could be the decision to grow the mustache, right? So that's a change.
Okay.
But bigger change that we see in life is what I call inflection points. And an inflection point is, and if you think of it scientifically, or I guess mathematically, it's a point on a curve where it's going from concave to convex. And if we see these places where we're going through having inflection points, and we can focus and address those, or come up with a strategy, or maybe even just simply identify them, and then put a little focus to it, we can really bend the curve and have some great success, and really bring change into our lives, and not just be the victim of it.
Tell me more about bending the curve. Do you have an example of that?
Yeah, well, so as I was working on this idea, I did a whole lot of interviews with my leadership group, and just executives and people I know. And it seemed that the idea of inflection points, the idea of change, really broke down into three areas. There's kind of a disruptive change, and that is, especially for job seekers, right? Where you've gotten laid off, maybe you got fired, right? So there is no doubt that you have to make some kind of change. There is the one that I think is more, I wouldn't say fun, but is easier, and it's more fulfilling. Is that purposeful change. Maybe you went back to school and you've now got a degree in something that you didn't have before. So you've been drawn into an area, and you're making the change for that.
Yeah,
and
it's purposeful.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that happens a lot in relationships, right? So going from being single to being married is a big change, but it is something that is purposeful, and it feels empowering. Whereas the disruptive part, getting divorced, having the death of a spouse, an illness, can be really disruptive. But the one that I spend most time coaching in, and is what I call the delayed and the deferred. It's where change is needed, but it is not easily, it has been avoided. And I can look at my own career and my own relationships, and look at places where the handwriting was on the wall, but I didn't want to recognize it. And I think that everybody's got instances of that where it shows up in their life. So those are kind of how I see in inflection points. And each one of those, kind of the disruptive, the purposeful, the delayed, deferred, need different kind of coaching around it.
Well, in delayed deferred, I mean, I just felt, I have my own examples of that. And that was a pretty visceral hit to me, because I think of things that I still want to do and I'm not getting any younger. Right. And so I feel like that, not to project, but that there's the disruptive that just happens. There's the purposeful where it's let's say the mechanics to get to that change are easier. Those levers are easier to pull, where the delayed deferred is that there can be quite a bit of regret and strong feelings, or just fear around. There's the regret if you don't do it, and there's the fear before you do it, or hesitation before you do it, that can really get people stuck in the mud.
Yeah. And these things all can they can overlap too. I know as I got into the coaching world about 5 years ago now, that there was a disruptive piece going on in my career, but there was also a delayed and deferred, because I had not been actively engaging myself to figure out what that next thing would look like. But there's also a purposeful. I did some leadership coaching with CTI and really connected with a group, and that empowered me and energized me to go ahead and complete the coaching piece and get certified and be a professional coach.
And what before that 5 years, what was your first act?
Yeah, so my first act. My first act was I came out of school as a CPA, and I went to work in manufacturing as an accountant, and I didn't really like it. I got my CPA, but I was bored, and I went to work from there, working for computer software companies, consulting and helping them implement financial software packages. And at some point in that part of my career, I was traveling too much. I had to get off the road. It was impacting my mental health, my relationships, and I was looking for something to do differently, and was able to do that, and then became a partner in a advertising and marketing agency in Atlanta. And so I worked in marketing and PR as the COO for 15 years.
Wow. Yeah. So this is your third or fourth act.
Probably fourth.
Yeah.
I think it's the fourth.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So quite a bit to share with your clients as far as perspective and empathy around going from act 1 to act 2, or I'm looking for something better, more fulfilling, right? And so that's the muscle you flex with your, I'm going to get this acronym to IPCM, Inflection Point Coaching Methodology.
Yeah. And why I don't claim to be a career coach. I do coach people in their careers, right? Sometimes they've gotten a promotion and need to step up in this new job. Sometimes they didn't get the promotion, and it's like, so how do we recover from that? What is the next step? And on the other side of it, I have interviewed lots of people, and doing my career changes, I have done lots of interviews, and not all of them very smooth.
Yeah. And actually, we talked about this at the top of the meeting. You have, because we know people might only watch a bit of this. So before we get too far into the conversation, I know you have some offerings through your coaching practice that you wanted to share for folks interested in talking more with you. Yeah.
So typically this is not something that I separate from my coaching practice, but I think it would fit for this group. And I'm looking for a good name for it. But the piece of here where it's the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, where I'm offering to work with 5 people for free. It's a 3-session coaching process where we identify that big, hairy, audacious goal. It could be looking for a job. It could be something different. No requirement for that. Just mention that you heard from me here at Justle, and we'll go through that. But it's to create that big, hairy, audacious goal, build it out, and then there's a check-in for how are we doing towards that. And it's super fun, and it's a little bit challenging too, right? You're gonna have to get connected to what's important to yourself and why is that stuff important, and how will we know when we get there? So it's got lots of good stuff in it.
Great, good. Do you know who coined the BHAG acronym? Because I've heard it in my travels, but I don't know how far back it goes.
I think it goes way back. I actually was looking at it this week, and I don't remember who said it. I almost want to say it was Carnegie, but it wasn't. But it goes back. It goes back a way.
Okay. One of those guys.
Yeah. And I need to come up with my own branded name for this piece of it, but I haven't done that yet.
All right. Well, more work to be done. Yeah. Well, cool. So if you want to stay, if it's okay with you, let's talk a little bit more about the delayed deferred, because as we've discussed, the purpose of this podcast is for folks who are in transition in one form or another, and we've talked a bit about that disruptive change and the purposeful change, but I don't think we've really dug into that delayed deferred. It's sitting there. It's like just out of reach type of change. So talk a little more about that and how you get people through that period.
Yeah, the way I kind of envision it, if we want to use a metaphor, is so life is a river, right? So life is a river, and that's where the motion comes from as we're moving down this stream. But in a bend in the river, there's two pieces to it. There is the inside of this where you can get stuck and stagnant. And that's kind of the delayed deferred piece of it. So we have stepped out of the flow, and we have now gotten caught up in this stagnation, right? This part, it can sometimes be depression if you think of it in mental health terms. And the idea is through identifying what we're delaying and deferring, how we can push ourselves back out into the stream, but not go overboard where we end up in the rapids, in the chaos of it. So there's kind of this thing that I like to do with someone who is trying to bring change into their life. And this is, are you familiar with Dr. Dan Siegel?
I don't know.
Yeah, so he's out of, I think it's UCLA, and he has this organization called the Mindsight Institute. And so this is really a modification of something that he talks about. Is like, so when you are thinking about making a change, when you're coming to an inflection point and you're thinking about making a big change, there's a kind of a gut check that you need to do to see whether you're actually ready for it or not. The first part of it is, are you flexible? Is your life set up in a way that it is not so rigid that you can do those things that you need to do to bring that change, right? So if you're looking for a new job, do you have the flexibility to go out and do interviews? Do you have the flexibility to, I don't know, where does that show up? Where do you think that might show up for job seekers?
Yeah, I mean,
time.
Yeah, time and even flexibility in their current role. And you know as well as I do that today, even when you're not working, looking for work is like a full-time job, right? So yeah, so it's almost giving yourself a springboard you're building your own springboard to accelerate that change or to facilitate that process, right?
Yeah, and then the second component of it is adaptability. And so that's what I hear right there is, so as the current changes, go back to the river metaphor, as the current changes, can you change the stroke that you're doing to navigate yourself back away from being stagnant or out of the rapids? A different type of opportunity appears to you. Can you adapt and imagine how that might actually work for you?
Yeah. And I mean, even with I know sailboats are a little bit more challenging, and depending on this type of the body of water we're talking about, but tacking with the wind, right? You need to be able to change where your sails are pointed to really capture, let's say, the wind equals opportunity or that change, and you're not just pulling one lever and then hanging on. It's a series of course adjustments.
And I went sailing recently and we had no wind. So the adaptability was we had to turn the motor on. Otherwise we would have fried out there in the sun, right?
Awesome.
Yeah. And then the next part of it is it coherent? Does it make sense, right? Is where you're trying to go, does it make sense in a bigger picture for where you are now? Like all of a sudden you want to get into the medical field, you're not going to get a job as the neurosurgeon, right? Does it make sense? Right.
And they teach us that a bit. And well, even in the corporate world, it's SMART goals. I always struggle with the acronym. It's measurable, actionable, relevant, time bound. Is the S strategic maybe? I don't know, does that ring a bell?
It rings a bell, yeah.
All right, okay. The S is something. So hopefully my boss in my day job isn't watching this. But even in my entrepreneurship 101 class in business school was, there's an idea and there's an opportunity, right? And there are the people who have a network and funding and expertise and know-how, and they stumble upon something that matches with them. It's an opportunity. But to your point, I want to be a neurosurgeon, but I just walked off the street and let me at that brain, right? So yeah, there definitely has to be some pragmatism bundled into that big, hairy, audacious goal.
Right. And it could be even like maybe it's within the same field, but you need to think of the right level that you're looking for.
Yep.
Especially if you're trying to make some kind of change, move into a slightly different field, that there may be a step back in the hierarchy. And then we'll talk about this in the self-management part, but then the ego can start to get involved. Right. And that can always be a challenge.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is self-management next?
Nope. Not yet. Self-management is number 3. We got a little bit more here. All so right. Then do you have the energy to do it? Emotional?
Yeah.
Physical? We've been there before, right? We all know this, that looking for a job can be draining. It can be discouraging. But how do you have that energy to make these things happen? Energy to push yourself off of the rocks, not be stagnant, and the energy to also avoid where the rapids are picking up. So.
Right. And I'd say there's some articles that have popped up into my stream lately around how many rejections it takes for somebody to start to get demotivated, and helping people understand that 10 rejections in a week is what a lot of people are seeing, right? And to not let that take the wind out of your sails as we continue this nautical analogy. But yeah, it's important to find ways to fill your tank, because it can be the adversity is real, right? The struggle is real, as I say.
Right. And then the last part of the gut check piece is do you have stability to do this, right? Do you have money coming in, right? You don't want to, you need to have some flexibility, but if you quit your job, does that then take away your stability to do it?
Yeah. Right. And it adds a whole separate layer of pressure.
Right. Yeah. And then what is that group of people that you're using to help provide stability? Right. It can feel very lonely out there doing it. Right. So that's the gut check part, which is the least fun piece of it. The next part is the BHAG, right? The big, hairy, audacious goal part of it. And so it's like, so people say, and this is the fun part. And this is the part where we get to drill in. It's like, so somebody says, I want to change jobs. well, okay, you want to change jobs, talk about that job, and then really build it out in a way that is exciting to you. You can have emotional connection and still be flexible with it. So like, I want to land this job with a company that is the leader in its industry, and I want to be able to have huge impact on my team and coworkers, or whatever that might be, but really build some hairy, audacious piece into it.
Yeah, and I'm processing that because there's so much happening with the Great Resignation, the Great Reshuffling, that is still going strong, where folks are leaving for greener pastures because they're tempted by something better, right? The old adage of the grass is greener, and many people are making those changes and saying, oh, it's the same type of challenge, it's just a different place, right? So, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit in the ego and perception of chasing after the title and the money, being very deliberate about what it is you want, whether it's, to your point, a mission-based company, or what the type of culture you want, the type of team you want to be part of, and being able to identify that stuff in advance before you've taken that big leap. Right?
And it could be that if you start to really build out this big, hairy, audacious goal, that it will help identify those things that are important to you, and maybe they're available to you in your current position,
right?
And that's where you need to be focused on how to grow in that, as opposed to change. Mm-hmm. So it gives some grounding, but it also gives it just some emotional connection, so that when things get tough, you're like, oh, this is why I want to do it, because I want to be super impactful and work for a leader in the field and be for a service-based company that is changing the world, and not at Twitter, right? Right.
Yeah. And I think, well, I'm a very impatient person. I wonder in the, let's say the type of folks that you're meeting, these things do take time, right? You need time to develop in the role, to learn about the company, to learn the culture. I think the stat is it takes a year at least to get fully onboarded in a role, especially in a larger organization. Have you, in the people you've chatted with, have you had to kind of talk people off a ledge of, hey, I've been here 6 months and why have I not been promoted? And getting people to understand that some of these things require
buyer's
patience.
Remorse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what you said actually led me into kind of the next part of the big, hairy, audacious goal, is to build out the milestones on this. Right? Yep. So, you're looking for say you're in the job market and you're just starting out. So get that resume done, right? Identify the client, identify the places that you want to work. Pick out who your references are going to be. Look for people internally in those places that you can network with. So and that can change depending on what change you're trying to do, what inflection point you're at. But those would be some that come to mind immediately when you think about looking for a new job.
Great.
And then the other part is, we're not in this alone. Sometimes we feel like we're all alone, but what are the resources that you have to do this? And resources is not just what, but it's who. Who do you need to make this happen? Mentors, support team. I like to mention that like my leadership cohort, they are there on call for any of us. So if you're going through some challenge, need some kind of reality check, that's really important to have. And maybe that's something that as you get into this job seeking process, that you need to, with intention, identify and build and request help. Say, hey, to your former boss two jobs ago, say, hey, I'm going through this and I could use your help. Would you be available to talk to me about it?
Yeah. And there's a certain amount of vulnerability and say reluctance or fear, but there's people that I've coached who were looking but hadn't really tapped into their network, and after a couple of coaching sessions realized that, oh, I do have people who are in positions or in roles or who could help me sort through my what's next. And one of the people I coached, they actually jumped positions from manager to senior director based on a contact. So I think it's important too to understand that even though you might not have checked in with folks in a while, in many cases people want to help, and if you've cultivated the network, kept some of those contacts fresh, people are generally open to doing anything they can to help one another out. My co-founder here at Justle, he was very public about his job search after a period of, I don't need anyone's help, I'm talking to all these people and having all these interviews. And then that kind of slowed down. And then he realized, the hard way, realized that he needed to start building a network, and was very deliberate out on LinkedIn about sharing that journey. And he was overwhelmed with how many people just came out of the woodwork. So I know I went down a bit of a rabbit hole.
No, and I think it's great because I really relate to that, because just as my nature, it is, I don't do as good a job as I should. I hate that word. I don't do a good a job as I may have wanted to maintain those connections and cultivate those relationships over a period of years. And it's available and people are wanting to help and they're there for you. You just need to make yourself a little bit vulnerable and reach out. Right?
Yeah. And I think we've talked about this in other podcasts too, is once you get that job, don't stop, right? Cultivate that network, go to events, get out there. And especially if it's just people you respect and admire and you enjoy being around them, make an effort to keep those contacts fresh. It's no accident that the people who have been in our podcasts have been people we know. Right? So this is an opportunity to help people, but also hang out with the people we like, right? So it's take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I know this can't always be done because sometimes you can't let your current employer know that you're looking, but that is a downside to that because there's a secrecy piece which can work against you. The ability to be open and vulnerable and say what's going on in your life is really what's going to bring people in to support you and connect you with others, right?
Yeah, I guess a confidential support group, especially if you're looking to do a complete tangent or 180 in your career, that could be pretty disruptive to your current pot of people.
Right. Yeah, it could be. Then so the next piece out of the BHAG that I like to talk about, and this one gets really coachy, so I love it. It's like I am, and it's who do I need to be to accomplish this task of changing careers, finding a new job, getting out of the work thing, to have a new relationship, move to a new town. There's so many things, but who do I need to be in order for this to happen, right? I need to be confident. I need to be open-hearted. I need to believe that I can do this. I need to believe that I'm somebody who brings value, right? And the other part of it is, what do I need to believe? I need to believe that this is important. I need to believe that people care about it. I need to believe, I don't know. So the two parts. Who do I need to be in order to make this happen? And then the second part is, what do I need to believe about this? And how do those two things get emotionally connected to it and really support me in this challenge of sort of looking for a job?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let's do a dry run of this because I've had a similar conversation with my coach after starting a new role. And we talked about, hey, this is a new opportunity. I want to land right. I want to hit the ground running. And I went right into the details. And he pulled me back, just like you did, around, okay, well, how do you want to be?
How do you want to be?
And I just have to sit there and process that for a bit, because that is so important. And it's what do they say? It's not what you say people remember, it's how you make them feel. And so that's a big part of what you're just bringing in, being you. And then going in, what is we talk about imposter syndrome in coaching and the saboteurs that pop up, right? We could do a whole other podcast just on that. But how to manage that self-talk around what you're bringing to the table, right?
Yeah, right. So sometimes when you've landed that new job, you get very focused on, what do I need to be in order to be competent at this job? And the thing that maybe you need to be at that time is a good colleague, right? And a good listener, and get our own ego out of the way, because there's other people who are there who are going to provide lots of insight.
Yeah, and I'd say a tenet of coaching is being curious, approaching everything with a curious, non-judgmental mindset. That's a perfect state of mind to be in as you're rolling into a new opportunity, a new career, starting a new business, knowing that you don't have all the answers and your antenna are fully out collecting new data, right?
And then what do you need? And what do you need to believe? That,
yeah,
hey, that I can do this, that people like me, they really like me, right? You're bringing value, even if it takes a little while for that to show up in competence in the specific job skill.
Yeah. Cool.
Right. And so that's the big, hairy, audacious goal part. So that's the fun, and then that allows you to get emotional and build the idea of this change is going to be fun, and it's exciting, and it's really going to allow me to fulfill parts of my self that may not have been fulfilled recently or in the current role. And then the next part is the kind of the self-management part. And I'm working on this book. It's called The Self-Tailored Man. And it is, what are the things that we have learned over the years that we may have forgotten, that can allow us to be happier and be more in line with our purpose. And so it's really about, so what are the things like, and number one is awareness. And by awareness, it could be mindfulness, it's the meditation piece, it's the ability to realize that sometimes we are too head focused, that what's going on in our head is not everything that there is, and that we need to be able to relax, which is something I need to work on, right? Relax and pause and process it, and be aware that, hey, that's just me responding to uncertainty. That's just me responding to somebody else's ego, that they are feeling fear from you coming into a new job, and they may be territorial. And so that's kind of like just an awareness. That's the key to any beginning of self-management. I would imagine that you probably coach on.
Well, there's awareness, and I'd say empathy is another word that bubbled up for me.
Number two, yeah, right, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so number two, I call it Sonder. It is everyone's story is just as important to them as yours is to you.
Yeah.
Right. So empathy. So when they show this, let's just say that you're in a new job and your coworker is territorial and not helping, we can tend to otherize them and say, hey, they're not helping me, they're not doing this, they're making my life hard. But when the fact is that we don't know what is really going on with them, and we need to be aware that they are human beings with their struggles and challenges and egos.
Yeah. And I wish, if it was Ernie Gets His Way Day and I could make a decree, I wish that everyone would take some sort of, whether it's Myers-Briggs or Enneagram or just one of those tests out there that helps us understand how people are wired, so we don't have to kind of suss that out through experimentation. so you know, or Clifton strengths, right? So you have a sense of, okay, this is where this person tends to focus and excel, and they might need help in XYZ. I think the world would be a better place. We just had Elise Greenberg on. She's a certified Clifton Strengths coach, and it's just so insightful to help drive that point home around everyone's wired differently. Everyone's motivated and incentivized differently. They have their hopes, dreams, and fears. And yeah, I think especially today with technology, empathy is hard to come by sometimes because we do get desensitized.
Yeah, with technology and COVID and all the pressure out there, I think empathy is really is lacking. We can use a lot
and we
more.
want everything now. We're an on-demand society, and that's that, especially for folks who are on the other side of that demand. It's got to be tough out there.
Yeah, and I like the idea of having people take tests, so it gives you some signals about what they think is important and how they're wired. One thing I do like to do is like to warn my clients is trying to figure out somebody's motivation is really it's really tricky. Is if you think about it, half the time we don't even know our own motivation. So to think that we can look at somebody and see what is motivating them is a challenge. I think we're probably inaccurate. We're doing a lot of projecting. But what we can do is we can see how they're responding. We can look at the things that they're doing and watch people. They will tell you who they are, right? So but don't have to take it that next step of building it out. It's because and finding the motivation. Oh, because they weren't loved as a child, or because they are feeling inferior to me, or we take it a little bit too far. But their actions will tell us, and just to keep an eye on that. That's kind of one of my pet things I love to talk about is not reading other people's motivations.
Okay. I have some guys that drive up and down my street with loud motorcycles. I would really like to understand their motivation for doing that. So maybe I can stop one of them and have them do a quick assessment.
You can project and guess all you want, but you don't necessarily know until they tell you. It's like, oh no, we just hated the person that lived in that house 20 years ago. It's just a reminder, right? So I don't know. And then the next piece of this self-awareness is that this is super coachy too, that I call it freedom to be, that I am under no obligation to be the same person today that I was yesterday. And so if I want to present myself in a different way, as long as I'm being authentic and connected to what are my core values, right? Not just trying to fake people, but I can be different today than I was yesterday. And I can decide, I can say what's important to me in a different way. And it opens up just a world of opportunities if you can buy into that.
Yeah, well, especially if you've got to ride the rapids and course correct, right? You need to be okay with that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I used to be the guy that liked to stay over here in the calm water because it was easier. And if I got stuck, I could just push myself out. But I don't want to be that. I want to be the guy who is on the middle of the stream and who is touching the rapids and learning from all that confusion and stuff that's going on over there. And so I can move into a different career that allows me to be more in the rapids, or I can stay in a career, accounting career potentially, which lets me be more in the stagnant piece, the calm part of it.
Yeah.
And and that can change.
Well, and if you don't mind me digging a little, Ted, I mean, you had those inflection points throughout your life. Was that self-driven, or did you have these support networks around you, or could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, well,
and if that is too much of a tangent outside of the list you're walking me through,
give me the question one more time.
So you had very distinct inflection points. You were a CPA, and then you went into your COO role. So those are two big changes. And then you decided 5 years ago, I'm going to go in a completely different direction and do this coaching thing. So as we talk about all of the things that people should be thinking about as they're initiating these changes in their lives, did you learn that the hard way, or did you have a lot of this already kind of structured into what you were doing?
I think I'm one of those people that learns it the hard way.
Yeah.
And then a lot of my coaching is really, hey, I learned this in life, and I want
Yeah.
I want to help other people who can maybe navigate it more quickly, or a little bit less painfully, or people who see the world maybe in a similar way, and I can help them. Yeah. But if I look at these things, that all of these showed up somewhere in my change of careers, right? And maybe I leaned into certain pieces of it, or parts of it were more important with making some changes. Like when I had to get off the road as being a consultant, it was so rigid. There was no way for me. I couldn't even go to the dentist because my dentist didn't work on Friday and I didn't get back in town, right? So it was impossible to look for another job. Luckily, they discontinued that group I was working with, and they gave me a package. I'm like, all right, I will absolutely take this, because I have got to, I've got to get off the road. And that was interesting. So a lot of these things have, I've learned from every single one of them. Yeah. And some of them are aspirational too, right? The freedom to be. I think I am different than I was 5 years ago. I'm definitely different than I was 10 years ago, but I still like the idea that I am free to be different than I am today. And that can happen really quickly.
Yeah, that's super powerful.
Yeah, super powerful.
Well, and
as long as it's authentic and still connects to my core values, right? So that's another big piece.
So noted. Well, and self-tailored man, I know we haven't completed a book club concept yet, but this could be something we could absolutely come back and talk more about if you feel like there's more to dig into here.
Yeah, I've got a little more writing to do on it, so it's still in process.
So this isn't a book you were reading. This is a book you're writing.
Yeah, this is the book I'm writing. Yeah.
Okay.
The Self-Tailored Man. So
we just got a little preview.
You're getting a little preview.
Fantastic.
A little preview. And the next piece of it is, and this is really, I look at it and I like, oh, this is Eckhart Tolle right here. It's surrender. Where we resist, we suffer. So we've got to, it helps. We don't have to do anything. It helps if we can identify those things that we have no control of and just surrender to them, and don't complain. Don't fight against them. It's like the weather. There's things we can't control. And if we're complaining about the weather, about it rained on a day where I was trying to do something, it's not going to get us anywhere. Mm-hmm. And that effort, it could be so much better spent with the freedom to be that person who you want to be. Right? But the things we resist is where we suffer. So stop resisting. Looking for a job's hard. Just accept that.
Yeah.
Don't complain about it. You're going to suffer if you complain about it. Right? You're going to not get an offer. You're going to have lots of interviews, and the offer may not come from there, and it is out of your control.
And it'll take longer than you think.
It'll take longer than you think.
Yeah. Any other nuggets from the upcoming
All right.
Body
And then
of
the
work.
last one,
Yeah.
and then this one gets so it's equanimity, right?
Ooh, syllables.
It's the conscious realization of reality's transience,
Ooh,
right?
that's heavy.
This isn't forever.
Yeah.
The job you didn't get, it's not forever. The job you got, it's not forever.
Yep.
And
this too shall pass. Yeah.
And this too shall pass. So enjoy the good parts. Try not to, I don't want to say, don't avoid the bad parts. Take from those that pain and that disappointment and learn from it. But that too will pass. So
and I think staying curious, even in a bad situation, can help you rise above some of the potential negativity that adds to that, I guess, existential feeling of suffering. Right.
Right.
What can I pull out of this? What can I learn from this? It's hard to pivot to that when you're in it. But if you can be deliberate about that, that makes it, let's say, survivable. Yeah.
I recently kind of got chewed up in a meeting with a prospect. Didn't go very well, so I'm not going to be working with them. And the next day in my meditation and my mindfulness practice, I tried to, with intention, like, what can I learn from this? And be thankful that I got that kind of feedback, right? So still wasn't the most pleasant thing, but hey, we all learn, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And we were not a match to work together. So that's out there too.
Better to know that at the beginning.
Yep.
Yep. Well, cool. Ted, I am super happy you were able to join us today. I think there's so much folks can get out of this conversation, and thank you for sharing your time with us. We do ask folks that are on the call to just get a little more of a nugget and have a little fun with you. If you were on a desert island and you had to choose, let's say, object, person, something, one thing to take on that island with you, what would it be?
So I'm getting thrown off a boat and I appear on this island. From watching Survivor, I think I'd want a flint.
Ah, okay. Very practical, Ted.
But a little romantic interest might be okay too.
Little company, a little companionship. All right. Well, great. And Ted, thanks again, and enjoy your time out there in Hotlanta. And good luck to you with your practice and with your upcoming book. I can't wait to get my hands on it and see what you're putting out to the world.
All right, Ernie, thank you very much. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.